Kansas, 1860. A land of grass so tall it could hide a horse, storms so sudden they frightened the clouds themselves, and trails so uncertain that even the maps carried erasers. It was the edge of the frontier, the kind of place where history happened first. And facts arrived much later. And into this unsettled country rode a man who had once written headlines, now searching for cattle. His name was Ralph Duncan, former New York newspaperman, professional observer, collector of rumors, and, as fate would arrange, accidental participant in one of the strangest information networks ever to operate on the plains. Now, Ralph Duncan had fled journalism after discovering two uncomfortable truths. First, newspapers paid badly. Second, telling the truth was optional. So he headed west to buy cattle, which, in 1860 Kansas, was far safer than politics, and only slightly less dishonest. He traveled alone, ledger in one pocket, revolver in the other, notebook tucked inside his coat, because once a reporter, always suspicious. He moved from ranch to ranch, bought steers, counted brands, and every night he wrote in his journal. But soon, he began noticing something strange. Ranchers knew things, important things, before anyone else did. One man predicted a raid 3 days before it happened. Another sold cattle the morning before prices collapsed. A third moved his herd hours before a stampede that destroyed 3 neighboring outfits, and when Ralph asked how they knew, they all gave the same answer. Quiet, uneasy, almost embarrassed. Ask the Indian girl. At first, Ralph assumed this was frontier humor. Kansas was full of nicknames. Ask the mule, ask the wind, ask your luck. But then, he heard it again, and again, and again, from different men, different towns, different trails, always the same phrase, ask the Indian girl. Eventually, curiosity defeated common sense. Ralph followed directions to a small trading post near the Smoky Hill River. Half stockade, half shack, and sitting outside, weaving a basket, was a young native woman. Quiet, unassuming, barely noticed by anyone passing through. And yet, every trader, scout, drover, and gambler who came through eventually found a reason to sit nearby, to speak softly, to listen carefully. Ralph waited his turn, offered coffee, complimented her weaving, mentioned cattle, and casually asked if she happened to know anything about market prices. She looked at him once, long, unblinking, then said, "Your steers will be worth less tomorrow." Which annoyed him, because he had just bought 50 head that morning. The next day, prices collapsed, a river crossing flooded, supply trains delayed, markets oversupplied. Ralph lost half his expected profit. Now he was interested, very interested. Over the next weeks, he returned often, always with small gifts, sugar, cloth, ink, paper, and every time he asked questions, he received answers, accurate ones. Raids before they happened, storms before clouds gathered, price shifts before markets opened, deaths before they occurred. Sometimes she refused, sometimes she spoke in riddles, sometimes she simply said, "Too loud, ask again later," which, in hindsight, was the most reasonable response to frontier journalism ever recorded. Ralph began writing secret notes. Not headlines, not articles, just lists, predictions, outcomes, accuracy. After 2 months, she was right more often than wrong, far more. Uncomfortably more. Naturally, Ralph assumed trickery. Perhaps she had scouts, messengers, signal fires, carrier pigeons, highly educated prairie squirrels. He investigated, found nothing. She rarely left the post, spoke little, received few visitors, yet somehow, she knew everything. Then came the cattle raid, a massive one, planned by 3 bands, 2 territories, 40 men, scheduled secretly. Ralph heard rumors, asked her. She said, "Move your herd tonight." He didn't, because for once, he wanted proof. The raid came, exactly where she said, exactly when she said. 3 ranches burned, 2 men killed, 200 head vanished. Ralph's cattle, untouched, because a sudden thunderstorm had scattered the raiders an hour before reaching them. A storm she had predicted. On a cloudless afternoon, that night, Ralph decided to ask the forbidden question. "How do you know?" She smiled, just once, and said, "Because everyone tells me." And this is where twisted history truly begins. Over the next months, Ralph discovered the truth. Not mystical, not supernatural, something far more impressive. She was the center of an information web stretching across the plains: scouts, traders, women at camps, children at rivers, messengers between tribes, teamsters at crossings, rail surveyors, army cooks, telegraph riders. All talked, all gossiped, all bragged, all complained, and no one ever noticed. They were telling her everything. She asked nothing, judged nothing, remembered everything, and quietly sold predictions. In exchange for favors, protection, food, safe passage, or simply silence. Ralph realized something else. She wasn't controlling events, she was editing them. A warning here, a delay there, moving cattle, redirecting raids, saving some men, ruining others, not for money, not for revenge, but for balance. And here's the most twisted part. Ralph began publishing coded market tips back east, predictions, trends, warnings, all based on her information. His reputation exploded. Former failed journalist, now hailed as a Western economic genius. Meanwhile, she remained invisible, uncredited, unthanked, unrecorded. In 1862, Ralph returned to the trading post, to thank her, to pay her, to offer partnership. She was gone, post abandoned, no tracks, no message, only one thing left behind, a scrap of paper. In careful English, stories belong to those who notice them, not those who print them. Ralph never wrote about her, not once. In later life, he called her simply the editor of the plains. And that, friends, is the twisted history of the woman who may have controlled the Kansas frontier without ever signing her name. If you enjoyed this twisted tale from the secret networks of the frontier, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. It helps these forgotten stories travel further than any wagon ever did, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss next week's twisted history. Where rumors run faster than horses, legends hide in plain sight, and the past never tells the whole truth. Thank you for watching, and come back next week for more twisted history.